It seems like the intro video is not starting up for us, but that's okay. Technology, always a fun thing. Welcome, everybody. I'm Shake Sulikian. I'm really excited today to have Dr. Alan Voskanian join me for a conversation on integrating our personal and professional lives. Dr. Voskanian is a physician, father, a spouse, published author, comedian, which I didn't know about until a few seconds ago, writer, speaker, and in his day job, he is the Chief Operating Officer and Vice President at Cedars-Sinai Medical Networks. Dr. Voskanian and I met early in the pandemic through an amazing program offered by Dr. Lauren Breitman called Writing Medicine. These reflective writing sessions were created in the early days of the pandemic for healthcare workers and their loved ones as a way to make sense of the world and to help cope with the stresses of the pandemic. Dr. Breitman still offers these transformative and profound sessions. I am forever thankful to Writing Medicine and Dr. Breitman for the sessions and for facilitating this amazing connection with Alan. I'm so excited for today's conversation. Today, we're excited to have people joining us on 3 different platforms. Please drop a note in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. We love seeing people joining us live, or if you watch this at a later time on one of the platforms, comment and let us know where you were. We will be tracking the comments and responding to them. We also would love your tips and tricks for integrating personal and professional lives, as well as any questions that you might have. Please note there is a slight delay in the stream, so if we don't read your comments and or share your questions right away, bear with us. Alan, welcome. I'm so excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shaka, for inviting me. I'm excited. I can't think of anything better to do on a rainy Sunday than chat with you and together learn about some tips and tricks.
Awesome. And Paul, welcome from Houston, Texas. Thrilled to have you joining us. Alan, as a physician, father, spouse, and a so sorry, I don't know what that is. And a leader at Cedars-Sinai, you undoubtedly face many, many demands on your time. I'm sure you could be doing 7 different things in 1 minute. What are some of the biggest challenges you encounter in trying to integrate your personal and professional life?
Wow, we're starting with like a big question.
Yes.
Yeah,
we don't have a lot of time, so diving right in.
Jumping right in. I think for me, there's a lot, right? I think all of us on this call juggle a lot between family, being a parent, being a spouse, being kind of what we do at work, and then also all of that in addition to just taking care of ourselves, exercising, things that brings us joy and passion, maybe outside our work. So I think for me, I've realized that there's nothing worse than when I move from one activity to the other, or one of these dimensions of my life to the other, but I carry what I want to call like residue from the other one. And that really impacts negatively the other activity that I'm in. For example, if I'm at work and fully like in flow, I'm really involved in work, but let's say there's something happens that is not a positive experience. And that there's opportunity for that, right, in everybody's work. But if I go back home and now I have like 2 hours, let's say, after I get home to spend time with my family, with my kids, but if there's this nagging residue, this nagging thought about what happened at work, now at home, then I'm really not enjoying and not fully present with my family because I'm still thinking, ruminating about what happened at work. So I think one of the things that I've found very helpful is being able to uh, be fully present where I am and in the activity I'm doing in all the different facets of my life. And it's a practice. I'm still trying to make that better, but that has been very helpful to me. So that way, when I'm fully present, if it's my kids' music rehearsal, if it's just having dinner with my family, I really make a conscious effort to put my phone aside to really be there.
I love that. Do you have any other tactics where you are able to say or do something physically or somatically that puts you um, in that moment, in that physical space, mental space?
Yeah, yeah. Some of this started early in the pandemic when I was working in the clinic, and you know, part of like I developed this routine of I was wearing scrubs and masks and concerns about like very early on. If you remember, we were worried about like bringing COVID home, so like just taking all my clothes off, showering before I would go and spend time with my family. And that was more of a physical routine out of necessity. But I've made similar routines in my transitions. And one of them happens when I'm seeing patients in a busy day of clinic, when my patient is behind the door. And I've made this routine that as soon as I put my door on the door handle, and it's very brief, I just take a quick, deep breath and center myself. And I just tell myself, like, be the best doctor you can be for the patient that's behind this door. And then just I leave everything else behind, like everything else on my to-do list, what happened like a few minutes earlier, and I just really focus on the patient that I'm going to be seeing. So for a lot of those transitions that happen, I've made something similar, like a similar routine. Sometimes it's just listening to a certain music on my drive home. I have this Spotify playlist that I listen to that it like puts me in the right mindset when I get home. So that way I know like, okay, my work is done and now I'm going to focus on my family. And so I think those little things are helpful to me personally, those little mindfulness practices. It's not like sitting for hours and doing like meditation. It's just micro mindfulness practices.
I love the description of the micro mindfulness because it would be fabulous if we had even 5, 10, 15 minutes or an hour between things to be able to decompress and
Right.
get rid of that residue before jumping into the next thing. Sometimes that's not the case, as I only have one kiddo, but sometimes it's like rushing to get to that next
Yeah.
thing and you're dealing with traffic. I love the idea of having a playlist or something that puts you in the right framework, right? And it could be a different playlist for rushing to a meeting with executives versus rushing to the kids, whatever it is, sport,
Yeah.
athletic, or dance, or
Yeah.
a music recital. And the if hand on the handle thing, I haven't heard anybody describe that, but that I'm sure it takes like 5 to 10 seconds, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not like a
Yeah.
long process.
Yeah, I wrote a poem, like a very short, brief poem about. It's called my. It's titled "Door Handle." I actually put it in my book. It's very short because I wanted to just highlight how quick that experience is when we put like just very mindful, being mindful in a very brief second. And for Zoom meetings, I do the same. I just before I click enter, like my mouse is hovering over like enter the room, and I just take a deep breath and I'm like, okay, how do I want to show up right now in this meeting? And I just did it prior to attending this meeting. And sometimes it's not easy because like my first meeting of the day, I'm probably just rushing, coming back from the gym, trying to shower, trying to get in front. So sometimes there's no time. And I think because I realized that, and that feeling of being in rush is really not good for me. I don't like it at all. And I think it makes me act in ways that is not aligned with my virtues and the way I want to show up in this world. And I've realized that often when I'm doing something that's not fully aligned with the way I want to be, it's because I'm rushing. So I try to be proactive and actively do things that are not rushed. And it's not easy, but it takes kind of practice and a routine of looking at my calendar. Like Sundays are my day that I look at my calendar for the week ahead. So after this call, that's what I'm going to be doing. And I try to find like ways to just lighten my schedule slightly, create mini micro moments for me to use the bathroom, be able to eat something, and also like setting reminders of how I want to show up in each of the meetings I'm going to be. And one more thing I try to minimize is task switching, like switching from one task to another task. I feel like that also creates stress. So I try not to do that too much. Like it works for me if things are like organized as much as possible. So that way there's less residue going from one task to another, back to another, and then you're just fully in flow when you're doing something.
I so appreciate that, and taking that time and knowing what you need to be your best self, right?
Yeah.
Because what you need might be different than what I need, might be different than what Paul needs or any of our listeners need. So being in tune with your own successes and how you can shine is such an important piece. I was so inspired recently by one of your posts, and this was impetus for me saying, let's have this conversation about you having to make a difficult decision between a work meeting and your son's performance.
Oh, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about like how you make those kinds of decisions? Have there been instances where you're somehow combined the family thing with a work obligation? I have a couple of examples where I did that, but I'd love to know how you make the decisions to what to pick, and then if there are opportunities for integration, truly like family and work.
Yeah, I'm thinking about when I was able to integrate both. And, I think that's really the key, when you can do both and integrate. And I've realized that every time when I was younger, I would try to create this like very strict, like black and white boundaries between one and the other. And that was very stressful for me. It didn't work for me. And for some people that works. They need very clear, like, boundaries of like I don't do any work on weekends, or I stop working at like 5 p.m. And I realized that those things sometimes would even create more stress for me. So I think some of it is finding the sweet spot, the balance between how do you make decisions that allow for you to be present for everything that's needed from you in your life. And I think in that specific example, there was a meeting that I really wanted to go because it was a great opportunity for me to connect with people, to develop relationships, and I also love my work. Like, I have fun at work. So I think for me, it's not. I feel so grateful and lucky to really enjoy my job and love being present with everybody that I'm present with. So so that was like one pull. And then I also know that my kids are growing up so much, and I've made so many mistakes. When I have 3 boys, and 2 of my boys are teenagers, and they will soon be leaving the house to go to university. And when I was earlier in my career, there were times where I missed some music rehearsal or sport games, and those are things that I feel like I have a chance not to repeat those mistakes with my youngest son. So as a rule for me, it's always like recitals, school events, anything, even if it's a parent teachers meeting that maybe my presence is not going to be as needed. I want to be there because it's important to me. And I think those are the moments where like I don't want to look back and say I missed those moments, that recital, the violin recital, the school play. I mean, I'm so serious about it that even I've changed trips. Like even in a few weeks, I need to go to a meeting, and one of my kids has a play. The play is late Sunday afternoon. I couldn't find a flight to fly out on a Sunday afternoon, so I'm gonna fly out very early on Monday morning so I don't miss that. So it's less about like work versus like school activities. It's really prioritizing like having some type of a roadmap to where to what I'm going to use when I'm coming up with those decisions. And for me, I really don't want to miss like my kids' activities. Like that's a very high priority for me. So with like that being my North Star, then I can make decisions easier. And like that decision was easy. There are times where I try to integrate. For example, last summer, I've always wanted to volunteer and go to an underserved country and do a medical mission work. And my one of my sons is interested in healthcare, and he wanted to do a volunteering. So he and I went and did that activity together in Guatemala. And that was an example of mixing this two interests. Like it was something that I'm so passionate about. He loves it. So we did it together, and it was such a great bonding experience. And one more thing that comes to mind is golfing. And golfing is something that I've never had the opportunity or privilege of doing it, but it's something I like. And I realized I talked to my two of my boys, and they're interested in it. So we're taking golfing lessons together. So there are opportunities to mix what I like doing personally, like with my kids. With work, it's a little bit more challenging to bring them to my work environment. But I'm curious what you've done.
I love the examples, and I will say one thing. I think as a society, we often say men have an easier time prioritizing work over family, and I
Right.
don't think that's correct. I think that's just a crazy notion that we have, that it's better or easier for men to say, I'll miss that in favor of a work obligation. So thank you for calling that out and talking about
Yeah.
the importance of prioritizing. Again, what's important to you. You can love family and work, right? And
Yeah.
for me, so I
I
wasn't.
think, sorry, Shaka, I was just
Yeah,
like that triggered something in me. I think that's so unfortunate. That, like that we as like men get put in that category that like we should be missing things that like it. I feel like it's really sad. Because when I've worked in hospice and palliative care, end of life care, and so I've been present at bedside, during the last moments of people's lives. And, that whole cliche of no one ever says, like, I wish I'd worked more on their deathbed is really true. People always often, like, regrets they have is, like, I wasn't there for my kids, and I wish I had spent more time with my kids. Like, that's a very common thing that people share. And how sad that as a society we normalize that for men. Like you should compromise that. Like you should not be at your kid's school play. Like, and that's not good.
yeah. Oh, I agree with you. And I have an interesting marriage. My spouse, my husband, was a stay-at-home parent for some time.
Yeah.
He loved it. I tried the stay-at-home parent thing, and that wasn't for me. I really do get a lot of joy from my work, and um, most recently, I mean, as a president and executive director of an organization, I wasn't a frontline provider, right? But I would take my son to my office so he would see what I do. He, being in a community healthcare setting and the work that I was doing, people would come up to us in the grocery store or, at Target or what have you, and say, the program that you offer, the stroke program, saved my dad's life. Thank you so much. And knowing the work that I was doing in the community. And when I decided to leave that position and told my son, actually, interestingly enough, he was younger, but his response was like, "No, mommy, the patients need you," because that
Yeah.
was his experience of seeing how my work translated to what was being done in the community, and explaining to him that, I wasn't the direct service provider
Yeah.
and they still had great physicians, etc. But I think it was important for him to know that the days where I wasn't there for dinner, for our family dinner, it's three of us. We sit down with my husband, myself, and my son, and we talk about our day. There was a year where I missed a lot of dinners because of the stroke program that we were trying to
Right.
stand up, that he knew and understood that the sacrifice we as a family were making and some of the time that I was taking away from being with him was in service to
Yeah.
something good,
Yeah.
right? So that integration. The other thing, I've actually started taking him on some business conference trips with me. I've integrated having my mom fly out. So we went to Chicago a few years back. My husband's 90-something-year-old grandmother lives outside of Chicago, and my mom flew out and they spent some time with grandma, and I could be at the conference. And so adding some of those
Yeah.
elements of, is this an opportunity to
Right.
introduce you to a different
Right.
culture or a different place, or visit with somebody or get a
Right.
different perspective, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, I just actually just it's funny you mentioned Chicago. That's I did that also last year. I went to a conference in Chicago and I took one of my kids who was interested in exploring universities in Chicago. So it was so great because it was a bonding moment. I was at the conference. He explored the city. We would get dinner together, and yeah, those are great examples where like this nice integration of one dimension of our life with the other.
yeah. And I wanted to ask you, wrote a book during the pandemic. I can't even imagine the work that you were doing, all of the obligations that we talked about that you have, and then that decision to write a book. How did you fit that into your routine?
Hmm.
And I'm
Yeah,
going to.
it's oh, thank you. Yeah, it's on Amazon and different websites.
Yeah, so if
I
people, just quick plug, if people want to get the book, the QR code, they can scan it and it takes you to your Amazon book thing. And I wanted to make sure that we had the book cover so for folks to see.
How
Okay.
cool is this? Like very fancy. I love this. Um anyway, so yeah, I think it's I think you remember like the first time I joined the Saturday writing session was when you were moderating it. So I don't know if you remember, but you were moderating a session, um, and before, like I was writing on my own, but didn't share it with anybody. And then I think you said like, who wants to share? I shared something. It was actually related to I think Armenian genocide, or so that the reason why I was in that session and I was writing was coping with my grief because my mom had passed away. My mom passed away in October of 20, like very, like still relatively early during the pandemic. And it was such a isolated time period where all the normal ways we deal with grief were not at my disposal. So I joined that writing group. I really felt so good after being able to write. And then and I love studying too. I love, like, one of the things that bring me so much joy is always being a student and being a learner. So I looked at different programs. I found a program at Harvard Medical School that there was a acceptance and admission process. So I was able to get admitted to the Harvard Medical School 1-year program for writing. And luckily, because Harvard is in East Coast, their classes would start at 5 a.m. My time, Pacific time.
Mhm.
So that was perfect. It was 5 to 8, 3 hours, and I could wake up early. I would wake up at 4:30. I still wake up at 4:30. Then I would take class 5 to 8, write, and then I formed a writing group. I would write. It just was so therapeutic. And then I was like, let me publish this book. And it was my first attempt. It was always on my bucket list to write a book. So that's how I did it.
My goodness, what time do you go to bed if you get up at 4:30?
I try to go to bed at 9. I mean, but it's like probably I fall asleep around 9:30. I wear a digital device that measures, like, my sleep kind of patterns, and that was helpful to me. I realized, I was spending so much time in bed, or I wasn't sleeping enough. So I tried to go to bed, like, typically around 9, and fall asleep around 9:30, and then wake up at 4:30, which works for me, because then I go work out, I do my stuff, everything that I need to do to feel good. So
Awesome. No, thank you so much. I love the book, and I love that when we saw each other, I have an autographed version, and I
yes,
love that. And I've gifted the books. A couple of my cousins are physicians in Southern California. One of them is in palliative care. So I've gifted your book, and I know that another book you hope to write is something around lessons learned from people you have had the pleasure of supporting through your palliative care practice. And I think that would be absolutely amazing. I love
great.
reading your writing, your poetry, your prose is so fabulous. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm
Thanks.
so honored that you came to that first session and shared, because it was extremely moving. And I do remember the session, and I
Yeah.
remember you reading your piece. And I personally get a lot from your vulnerability and how you choose words and how you express your feelings in your writing. So thank you for sharing that with the world.
Thank you so much. Okay, that means a lot to me. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. The 30 minutes are flying by. I don't see in the comments any questions or anything at the moment, but I'm curious, do you have any final piece of advice or anything you want to remind us or share with us as we think about final words for this topic?
Yeah, I can't believe 30 minutes flew by, and maybe we could do another session if your audience is interested. But I think for me, just since we're talking about work and life integration, and I see a question: what is the biggest motivation in life? Oh, that's such a deep question. I think, yeah, thank you, Paul. For me, I really think of my day. I just focus on my day. Like, every day when I wake up, because I wake up early, one of the things that I do in the morning is just really looking at my day and then setting an intention, and I read for 15 minutes, because that's, like, brings me joy. But I really divide kind of the things that I need to accomplish to feel like I had a good day in 3 main buckets. So the first bucket is focused on what I call love, or my relationships. So how do I want to be with my spouse? How do I want to be with my kids, and other people that are important to me in my life? And that might be like, I really want to take one of my kids to Trader Joe's with me because that's a good bonding moment. Or it might be that I really want to be present when we watch a TV show at night for dinner or something like that. Or maybe I want to get some flowers on my way from work. But that's the love life, or the home front, I call it. And then the other bucket is work. Like, how do I want to be at work? And work is not only the job we do for money, but there's other things I put in the work bucket for me. So one of it is writing, like writing poetry. I'm trying to learn and improve my skills. And I think, as I mentioned, stand-up comedy is something that I'm passionate about. So I try to make time for that too, even if it's writing 5 minutes. I just sit down and write for 5 minutes, something funny that happened to me, or an idea that I think could be funny. So it's my home front, it's my work, and then the last bucket is, I call it health or energy. Like, those are the things that I do for my own well-being, like what time I go to sleep, and do I exercise, what exercise I'm going to be doing today, and walking, like I want to make sure I walk 10,000 steps every day, and eating, like am I eating healthy food? So I think that helps me stay organized. And what is my biggest motivation in life? Wow. Like, it's, I think I want to be a good person. Like, the way I define good is, just make contributions to the world, and show up as a good person for my family. And, I've done a deeper dive into what good means to me, but it's really just also being present in the moment, and not thinking I need to make life a good life, like great life. I just need to make this one day really a good day. So that's how I prevent it from being too stressful. Like, if you think about the whole life, or like just like a New Year's resolution, like January 1st, January 2nd, like people are so stressed out, like you need to plan out the whole year. Instead, like, just focus on one day and like make that one day really great. So
that is awesome. Thinking about that one day at a time, right? It's not as stressful. It's not as onerous, daunting. You can say, what was it today? And do you, at the end of the day, go back and see how you did compared to those three buckets?
Yeah. So I start, like, in my morning, I write AM. I have this thing, maybe one day I'll share that. It's AMG, it's AM gratitude. I write 3 things I'm grateful for in the morning. In the afternoon, I write PMG, PM gratitude. So what things happen during the day that I'm grateful for. Then I write wins, like one thing I did really well, like one thing that was awesome that day. And then I have this other, like a reminder, it's called better. Like, then I think about, okay, what could I have done better that day? So that's kind of like wrapping up of my day. That's usually what I do before I turn off my computer. I just do that daily summary, and then I go to, spend time with family and go to bed. But am I perfect? No. Like, this is all practice. Are they days that I miss it? Yes. It's just, but that's the name of the game. If I do it more than half of the week, I'm super happy. And those are the days that end up being great, when I do the morning routine, I do the night routine, and just feel good.
Yeah. I love one of the things, I use the Peloton app, and a lot of the instructors say progress over perfection, right?
Yeah.
It's not about perfection. There is no perfection that we aim for. Let's make some progress, and practice makes that progress, right?
Yeah.
And managing that expectation. Alan, it has been so amazing to speak with you. Thank you again so much for taking the time. We didn't even touch on the comedy. I can't wait to hear more about the comedy. And when you have shows, I would love invites to it. Please let me know. When I'm in Southern California, I'd love to maybe go to one of your shows, or other times you're at conferences, etc. I'd love to hear about.
For sure. I have something coming up in March. I'll send you let me see when it is, if I have it written down, but it's, March 29th. If you happen to be in LA, it's at the Crow Comedy Store in
Oh,
Santa Monica. So, yeah.
okay. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you so
Great.
much for taking the time today. I know Sundays are family time and there's a lot going on, so I appreciate you taking the time from your loved ones to be on this conversation with me. I would love to do it again at some future time and dive into a lot of other things. Thank you again for making the time for today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shaka. It was great.